You know when an ant falls on the water and you see it, floating on the water, and it doesn't go through, it's surface tension. And it's the same thing with water and these feathers. And for a water bird like a duck, it'll have more of these bumps on the feathers, but all feathers have them, as far as I know, somewhat. So this water will just drip off of it. And if you put this feather in a glass of water, you'll see this silvery sheen because the water can't get to the feather, and it'll just pop right up. Another thing that feathers do is provide camouflage. And individually, for each feather, they can be striking, especially for a bird that uses its feathers for camouflage, like the Argus pheasant, which again is my favorite bird for its patterns. And I found the entire English alphabet, plus the numbers, and actually multiples of each, by being a little bit obsessive and just really looking closely, taking photographs, and putting them all together in this alphabet poster. But put all together on the bird disappears. Camouflage. So I made this poster and I said, that's something I want to improve on. I want to make it more colorful. And it's just these browns and russet reds and blacks. So I wanted to make it with colored feathers. So I looked at this one species of bird. I had made this image. So I said, I'm going to go look for colors like parrots. That's what I'll look for. So I look at a parrot and it's like, they're all, the same color. There's no pattern to it. And so I looked at about 100 species of parrots, and I looked at about 50 more species of birds, and I found that this is more colorful, but there's really very, very few colored, patterned feathers. So this was really a failure for what I wanted to do. The main way that colors are made, the bright reds and reds and yellows and oranges are made, is through a compound called carotenoids. And so think of carrots, how bright orange they are, and carotene. It's the same thing. So it's what the birds eat. You know how if you eat a lot of carrots, your skin turns a little orange, at least if you're kind of more white complexion like I am. It doesn't last very long, but that's what it gets more permanently put in the feathers. And they shed them in a sequence because birds have to keep being able to fly. Most birds don't shed them all at once. A few do, that's their strategy. They're very vulnerable then. So they shed them in a very specific sequence, and it's different for different birds. But say a tail feather comes out, the other tail feather on the opposite side comes out within a few hours. So that the bird, if you're swimming along with one hand like this and one hand open, it's going to be unbalanced. Same for the bird. And then those two feathers that were shed, the new ones grow in about halfway before the next pair is shed, and on until they have fully grown feathers. About 100 years ago, there was a dot-com boom in the feather trade because of women's fancy hats. And you could make big bucks blasting beautiful birds out of the sky, especially if they were really beautiful birds. They'd be in demand. And especially if you could find them all in one place, you could just really clean up. And which is what happened to the egrets in Florida. People were noticing that these birds were becoming scarce and started to get concerned. This is really when the conservation movement was born, where Audubon was born. And people started trying to educate the public to make it unpopular to wear these kind of hats, and at the same time to get legislation that would prohibit people from killing birds. And they were successful on both parts. And we now have what's called the Migratory Bird Act and other laws, but the Migratory Bird Act in North America is the big one for us, which means that you can't kill birds for their feathers or their meat. People used to eat robins, and they still do in other countries, that type of songbirds. But we can't, and you can't have their bodies, and you can't have their feathers. Do you recognize this guy? It's a pretty accurate picture of me because when I do fine work, I put these little glasses on. Did I mention my father was an eye surgeon? I learned a lot about the tools from him. And so these were his glasses, actually. It's eye surgery glasses. But this picture is not accurate in one way. And that is, when I spend hours laying all these little feathers out, one errant breath can send them all flying. So I look like an artist bandit because I have a bandana around my face. Yes?
Do you need to sanitize them or something so they don't decompose?
Yeah, so feathers are made out of keratin. So the question is, do they decompose or what do I do? And they can last a long, long time. But I do put them in the freezer. And this is what museums do now. I try not to use the chemicals. I put them in the freezer for 48 hours at 0, take them out, and if there's anything that's gonna hatch, it will hatch, and then I put them back for another 48 hours. Never had a problem with that, and it would be bugs that would decompose them. Light will affect the colors, except for the structural colors. You could have in light for 100 years, and they won't fade. Okay, here's Julia.
Oh, I just wanted to say that now that you've had a chance to see his work, you understand. One of the things that's so amazing about it to me is how well he knows the birds. And that really comes through in the piece. Like, he's not just making a picture of any old bird. It's clear when it's a crow, as Denise says, it's clear when it's a wren, because he knows what the birds are doing. He's observed them and seen them, pulling their worms out and doing things. The piece he mentioned, his first piece with the birds sort of flying out of the feather, is actually the frontispiece for this book. And Chris has brought a number of the books with him, so you can buy his book, which is fabulous. It's really beautiful and has a lot of information about the form and function of feathers, as well as lots of pictures of his work. So he's here, you can buy it from him, and you can have him sign it.
I hope that after hearing this talk that you'll see feathers in new ways. Like a falling leaf, a shed feather is a gentle reminder of the cycle of life. And